Good afternoon, it's Mel here from simplylive.com.au. I'm talking about pet sitting today. I will do a couple of these videos because I get asked a lot of questions about pet sitting, and just to try and keep them each a little bit shorter, I've split it up over a few videos. I've done one on the advantages of pet sitting, and obviously I've been doing it for a couple of years now, so I think the advantages way outweigh the pitfalls. But I will be looking at the pitfalls, or at least some considerations that you need to keep in mind when taking on a pet sit and whether it's for you or not. And I will also do one on how to try and get pet sits and the process of that. So what are some of the problems with pet sitting? And there are some, so you really got to think about it. First of all, you're probably going to have to apply for a lot to get some jobs. Now, initially, I applied for heaps and heaps and heaps and heaps before I got my first few because I had no references or no experience. If you get the opportunity, do it in your local town before you go anywhere travelling. This doesn't just apply to travelling pet sits. It could be just something that you do in your local area. But even if you're travelling, do some in your local area, do some for friends. Look at all the pros and cons and advantages of that while you're used to the layout of the house in your country, because it gets a little bit more difficult once you get to another country and you discover that their toilets are laid out different or their windows are different. You don't know how to open or close them. So get used to different houses and different things already in your town. Make sure that you're okay with that, and then it'll get you to asking the right questions when you go overseas. And by doing them locally or through friends and friends of people that you know, then you can get some references. Make sure you get references. You will need them, and then you can use those to help you get more. And it does get easier over time. Once you have a pet sit booked, bear in mind that what happens if they suddenly at the last minute have to cancel their trip. And you might have already paid for your flights and your accommodation, and you may have cancelled or not applied for other pet sits in that time. So you're suddenly left with 2 weeks on the go. It hasn't happened to me, but it's come close. So you do need to think about that and maybe clarify what's going to happen if that's the case. They could also change the dates, and I have had that happen to me, and it was quite costly to me in that, once again, I'd organised travel there, and then they said, look, we're going to have to cancel because we had to move the dates back. I ended up doing it for them at the later date instead because I had the space to fill anyway, so it wasn't so bad. But yeah, you do need to think about that in advance and see if there's ways around that and clarify that with them. You need to, when it's so well to say and good, well and good to say, I can't speak properly, that you want pet sits, but you've got to think about where you want them. Which countries do you want them in? What areas? Can you get from one to the other? Okay. Is it fitting into those general countries or regions that you want to go? And then you've got to make sure that the dates line up, that you don't have an overlap, or if you haven't got many funds, that you've got enough gap. You've got to think about how long you like your pet sits, a few days or a few weeks or a few months, or what you're looking for. And if you get that wrong, it can jiggle your holiday around. So you need to have a little bit of flexibility in your travel plans, because suddenly you might think, oh, it's logical for me to go to here, but then the pet sits that you get take you from here to here. And as long as you can get there and the cost is reasonable for you, that may be the best way for you to go. And you've got to be able to feel comfortable to change your plans if you want to do pet sitting as the whole thing. Or you can just say, I'm going on a holiday. If I happen to get 1 or 2 pet sits in there, that's a bonus. Completely up to you. In the pet sit style that I do, once I've locked in dates with someone, I try and make it fairly clear to them that they can't come back early. This is my home while they're away. I've made plans. I've made travel plans. I may be doing work with people. I may have set up appointments for my other work. I may have set up appointments to Skype my friends and all of that sort of stuff in the middle of the night because of time differences. So I don't want somebody else living in the house with me. I didn't do pet sitting to share houses with people. I do share a house, not the day I arrive, so that I can do a handover, and usually the day that I leave. But I'm not planning on sharing a house for a week. If I wanted to do that, I would go and stay in a hostel. This is my time to do my things. So you need to clarify with them what happens if suddenly they decide they get sick and they want to come home early, or they decide for whatever reason that one of them is not coming or going or whatever. And you have to make sure that you clarify that with them. I say to people, if you are coming back early, except for a major emergency, then you need to find accommodation somewhere else. You need to get a hotel somewhere. This is my home for the time that you agreed that I should be there for. But, I have had one or two times when, I've been flexible around that. You've got to be flexible too. You've also got to think about what happens if you get sick, either in the middle of the sit or just before the sit. How are you going to cover that? You can't leave them in the lurch. You've got to think about whether you're happy to have pets in bed. There are many sits who say to you that, yes, the cat or dog normally stays in bed, but if you don't want that, that's fine. Some pets, if you say, no, I don't want that, and you keep the door shut, they're going to bash the door down all night and keep you awake all night. So if you're not comfortable with pets in the bed, you've got to think about whether it's important to you, and you may restrict the pet sits, and you need to ask that question before you get the pet sit. Pets can keep you awake all night. Some pets are little annoying little beavers, and cats will run all over you, and dogs will, wake you up, and all sorts of stuff. So you don't always get perfect night's sleep, all of that sort of stuff. You need to plan your holiday to the pet schedule, and so it's sometimes worth thinking about that and asking about that before you get there. Because if you need to be home 4 times a day because it's an indoor dog that needs to go out for a wee, so you might have to get up at a certain time in a day to do that when you're normally a later in sleeper. You might have wanted to go and sightseeing for 8 or 10 hours, but you can't because you've got to come home in the middle of the day and feed the pet. So you've taken on the responsibility of doing this pet sit, so you need to factor in their needs, and then you fit in what you can around that, not the other way around. So it might clash with your sleep schedule. It might clash with what you wanted to see in the area. You've got to factor in that possibly it's in an isolated area. If you don't have a car, you've got to make sure that you're not going to feel that isolation if you're out in the middle of the bush, out in the country somewhere. And it's advertised as a country sit. You may love that. You may love the isolation, and that's fine too. So you just got to make sure you can get to and from. If it's a city sit, you may hate the noise. So you've got to think about, is that location ideally suited for what you want in your holiday or your travel plans? A big one that's come up for me recently and is increasingly a problem is about video surveillance and cameras inside of the house. I have now made it very clear to people that I will not tolerate cameras in the home. Some people have cameras set up in order to be able to watch their pets when they're at work and things like that. And some have the view that, if I've got a stranger in my house, I want to make sure that everything's safe. I certainly have the view that if you're not comfortable with that, then pet sitting may not be the right thing for you as a host. You're going to have to trust your pet sitter. I've got one pet that has a health issue, and so they want to keep the camera in that area where the pet slept at night, which I am fine with. If it's in a laundry, a pet area, I don't have a problem with that. And they agreed to show me how to turn it on and off, and they said that it flashes red when they're actually actively watching it. But this is my life, and even if I'm on holidays, if you're on holidays in a hotel, you do not expect or want the people who run the hotel to have a camera on you all day and night, even in the central areas like the lounge and dining, not even the bedrooms and bathrooms, but I'm sure you'd be mortified to find that there's a camera in your lounge room. So I don't want a camera in the lounge room either. I'm not being watched all day, living my life, especially as it's not a holiday, especially as it's not as, for me, that I can say, it's a few weeks, it doesn't matter. For me, it's my life, and I will not live my life being watched by people on a video surveillance camera. So I have had to have that discussion with people. I think it's important to think about. The dogs, as I said, require your attention as a priority, dogs and cats. But, if you've been out sightseeing for 6 or 8 hours and your legs are destroyed from where you just climbed, walked, you're still going to have to walk the dogs when you get home. And some of them require an hour or so's walking. And it doesn't matter how tired you are, you're going to have to do it anyway. So you're going to have to remember that the dogs take priority, and if you're tired, that's one of the disadvantages. If you're tired and exhausted from travel, you still have to look after those pets. And similarly, if you're sick, if you're unwell, if you get a cold or something like that and you don't want to drag yourself out of bed, you're still going to have to take the dogs for a walk. The cats less so, but they still need to be fed. There's different attitudes in pet sitting hosts, and I would strongly suggest that you talk to your host beforehand and see how you personality wise clash or otherwise, or just a general feel for them and stick with that instinct. I want to work with people who understand that I'm getting something great out of this for me, but also understand that they are getting a great benefit as well, and that I'm looking after their home and their pets. They're two most precious things in the world, probably, apart from their children. And so some people kind of treat you as like a slave or a servant and say this is a quick and easy job to use, when you just only doing a few hours a week. And other people go, you're a valued guest in our home. And you can normally tell who those people are when you arrive pretty quickly. Some people bring out nice guest towels, and some people bring out the worst, grungiest things they have because they don't see you as important and valid. I only want to work with those people who have generosity of spirit, not finances. I don't care if they're rich or poor, but a generosity of spirit in there, and are welcoming me and making me feel comfortable in their home. And I will similarly and always do the same in response. So the other factor with that is you need to consider if they're going to be very stingy and mean-spirited with how much food that they leave for you. You've got to really check that out a little bit before you go and see how you're comfortable with that. If you're buying everything yourself and you're happy with that, that's great, as long as you understand that's where it's at. What else? Oh, you've obviously got to be able to clean up the house after yourself and after the pets. You have to be very comfortable with picking up dog poop and cleaning out kitty litter or whatever it is that's required, giving doggy tablets. You have to be careful not to get bitten. You have to make sure that you're comfortable enough with dogs in particular. If you have to give them tablets, are you okay to do that? If not, don't do a pet sit with a sick dog. Some do get titchy, and some go after your clothes and possessions, and you need to clarify that before you get there as well. So yeah, I've had one dog wee in my suitcase. I emptied it out to air it, and they jumped in, weed in my suitcase. I've had cats that want to shred my suitcase. I've got little very expensive compression cubes, and I've had cats try and claw at them, and dogs try and chew them and pinch your underwear and all of those sorts of things. So that can be a problem if you haven't thought about that in advance and keep them safe and secure, and you haven't spoke to the hosts about that. Short sits can be expensive. So if you're doing a sit for 2 days or 4 days and you're having to travel across somewhere, the travel cost for a short amount of time obviously is quite expensive. You're going out to buy food for 2 or 3 days, which may not work out very cost effective for you. So it's much more expensive and time consuming to go all across somewhere to do a very short sit and go again. But if you want to see that area and you were going to go there for a few days anyway, it's perfect. The long sits can be a downside because if you don't like it, you're stuck there for a long period of time. So if you've never been somewhere and you suddenly find yourself there for a month or 3 months or 6 months, and you don't like the animals, or they keep you awake all night, or they're annoying, or anything you don't like, or you're in an isolated area, it's cold, it's rainy, you didn't expect it to be, or it's too hot, there's no air conditioning, then you're stuck there. You can't really do much about it. So personally for me, I would never take a sit more than 1 month unless in dire circumstance, unless I'd been to the place before and know that I like it and have really checked out the people or been to those people before. Even over 2 or 3 weeks, I'd start to question. And my preference is probably a couple of weeks sits, but that's just a pure personal preference. So just keep those things in mind. So things to consider or clarify in advance of going to the sit. Obviously, all of those things that I've just mentioned. What are you going to do if there's an emergency cancellation either by you or by them, and what's going to happen in that? Talk to them about that. Will they let you use their car? If you don't have a hire car, if you don't have your own car, will they allow you to use their car? Some will, some won't. What's the insurance situation? What's the driver's license situation? What happens if you prang the car? All of those things you need to consider. And same with a bicycle. A lot of places will let you use their bicycle, and so they have locks. What happens if it gets stolen? Who's responsible for it? If they don't have any form of public transport and a little bit far away, how close are they to a bus stop or the public transport spot, or can you walk into town easily, or the places you want to get to easily? Can you get to a supermarket easily? And keep it in mind for if it's a cold, rainy day as well. I got caught on this thinking, oh, town that's 10 k's away is not a problem. I can use a bike. I can get down there. And then I caught a cold, and it was cold and rainy. And the thought of, I didn't do it actually, riding 10 kilometres downhill in the rain when I'm sick, and then having to ride home uphill with my shopping 10 k's. I just bought garbage food from the local corner store for 2 weeks and made myself sicker. So keep that one in mind. Also clarify before you get there what you will use while you're there, and make sure that they're okay with that. So that those expectations, it doesn't matter what you agree to. You can agree to all or nothing. It's just whatever both parties are happy with. It's just worth clarifying it before you get there. Things like the food, what sort of food you can and can't use in their house. Their toiletries, do you bring your own toilet paper, laundry liquids, any cleaning, I obviously expect them to supply their own cleaning goods for their own house, anything to do with the pets, obviously. But, laundry liquid for your washing, is that covered? If it's going to be a longer term sit, or even in a short term sit, who will pay for the firewood, gas bottles for heating, air conditioning cost? If it's longer term, the utilities, the electricity, the water, internet. How good is their internet? That is a really big kicker for me. Really, really important for me to know, because I use the internet a lot. If you don't use the internet a lot, it's probably not so important, but make sure that your needs are covered with the internet usage. Make sure that, ask them at some point whether you may be quite happy to agree with whether they have unlimited usage, because you don't want to suddenly be streaming videos and cost them half a fortune if you're watching movies online. Will they collect you from the airport or bus station or train stop, and will they drop you back off with all your luggage, or do you have to find your own way there, is something to ask them. What happens if you break something? If you break a glasses or crockery, or just the basic bits and pieces? What if a window breaks? What if there's a maintenance repair issue in the house? Who will contact? Who's responsible for those things? And obviously, if you're using a car or bike, is the house warm enough or cold enough for you? So if it's going into a hot climate, do they have air conditioning or do they have fans? Are you going to be able to cope in that heat? And similarly, in a cold environment or snow, do they have enough heating in the house? Is it going to work for you? If you're very like me, if you feel the cold badly, do they have plenty of blankets there for you? Is the house warm? Do you have your own room for an overlap? So what I mean by that is that I always get there, especially with dogs, I want to get there the night before. I'm not walking into a house the same day that the owners are walking out, or after they've left, if there's dogs in the house, in case they think I'm an intruder and bite them. And I want to have some time with the guests, the hosts, to make sure that I like them, that I'm comfortable with everything, to be shown things properly, to make sure I can work the keys, all of those things. And so I prefer to get there the night before, the day before, and go through and go on the walk with the dog and see where they take them for a walk, all that sort of stuff. But what's going to happen when you get there? If they've only got a one-bedroom flat, are you sleeping on the couch while they're there? Or is there any privacy for you on that night, which may or may not bother you, but as long as you understand. Do you have a spare room? Or are you expected to sleep in their room? Are you comfortable sleeping in their room after they've gone? Some people aren't so comfortable sleeping in someone's bedroom with all of their possessions around them. And similarly, when they get back, I like to be back into the house and stay there until they're back in the house. So if they're coming back in the night time, I'm not going to leave till the next morning. So is there room for me to stay in the house satisfactorily? Once again, I don't leave the same day that they come back if I can help it, or before they've left, because what if their plane gets cancelled or something like that? They've left their pets unattended. Okay. Oh, what happens if the animals get sick? I'm running through this list. I've got them written down. What if the animals get sick? What do they want you to do? Who do they want you to see? How will you feel about that? You've got to think about that before you get there. What happens if an animal passes while they're away? My worst nightmare. I don't want that to happen at all. Can you have guests in the house? So especially if you're there for a month or 2 months or 3 months, you might want to meet a friend, get to know someone. You might want to bring someone home for a coffee, have a cup of coffee, invite them in. Is that okay with them? Is that going to be a problem? Can you take photographs in their house of their pets and put it on social media? Do you have to look after their plants, their garden maintenance, pool? Are you qualified to do that? Do they have maintenance people coming? So I had a circumstance, one of the first pet sits I did, where I suddenly heard men in the yard and I nearly died. I thought someone was stalking, breaking into the house or something, and I was freaking out, racing around. And then finally I managed to look out the window and see that it was a garden maintenance person that had come, obviously was started a lawnmower and started mowing the lawn. I figured a burglar doesn't mow the lawn. But it gave me a fright. And I've had people who've had cleaners come and not tell me. So suddenly I found someone in the house when I came out from the shower and nearly had a heart attack. So now I ask, do you have any cleaners and maintenance people coming to the house? And are you expecting deliveries, like courier deliveries, that I have to be home from? Because you don't want to go and book a big day trip somewhere and then find that they're expecting you to sit home and wait for their parcel to arrive. And are you going to agree to that in advance? So you need to think about that. And isn't it okay, especially if you're traveling a lot like I do, that you can get your own mail sent there and arrange that maybe in advance. So you might want to get a delivery off Amazon, or you might have some letters from friends or something like that, or just, something that you need delivered to you. Is it okay? And how do you get that? You need to make sure that your name's on it so you can sign for it. Or do they have a letterbox that you need a letterbox key to, or do you have to go to the local post box? All of that sort of stuff that you need to think about to get your own personal goods. And if they have service people coming, will they continue to come while you're there? Because I certainly say to people, I'm not a pool maintenance person. It's not my forte. I'd hate for something to turn bad on the pool. I will happily scoop it out. But if you normally have someone come and add all the right chemicals in it, please continue with that. And similarly, if it's a big garden, I don't mind looking after plants, watering them, the general stuff. But if it's a massive big garden, unless I've really compensated for it, or even more so, given explicit instructions on what to do, I'd hate for their favourite plant to die while I'm away because I just don't have the greenest thumb in the world. So that's some of the considerations and potential pitfalls of a pet sit. So lots of things to think about and make sure that you're happy with. If you like the information that you got on here, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Please make sure that you hit the thumbs up button, and please share. You may or may not be interested in pet sitting, but you might have some friends that are, and here's some tips that maybe can help them as well. And I'd love to get the word out on so many great ways to live. So subscribe, like, share. That's awesome, guys. I hope that's been of help today. I'll do another video on pet sitting shortly. Have a great day.